Anne of Windy Poplars. Anne of Green Gables, #4 by L.M. Montgomery. A fresh start. Anne Shirley stepped off the train in Summerside, her eyes sparkling with the promise of new beginnings. The role of principal at Summerside High School was a prestigious one, and she was determined to make a difference. But as she walked through the school's gates, she could feel the weight of expectation pressing down on her. The Pringle family, a name synonymous with influence in Summerside, had not taken kindly to an outsider taking such an important position. Jen Pringle, with her sharp tongue and sharper pen, had already made Anne's job difficult. "Late again, Miss Pringle?" Anne asked as Jen sauntered into class, a smirk playing on her lips. "Sorry, Miss Shirley," Jen drawled. "My clock seems to be as slow as this class." The other students snickered, but Anne's gaze didn't waver. "Perhaps, then, it's time we set our clocks to match the pace of progress," she replied, turning to the blackboard. Whispers and giggles followed Anne throughout her day, culminating in the discovery of a caricature of herself chalked onto the board. It was a cruel depiction, with her scarlet hair like flames around an exaggerated nose, her drawn face showing a mix of surprise and hurt, a clear mockery from the Pringles. Her heart sank, but her resolve did not waver. She wiped the board clean with a swift stroke, her mind already racing with plans to win over her students. As she contemplated her next move, Mr. Phillips, the history teacher, approached her with a sympathetic frown. "They can be quite the handful," he said, his voice low. "But you have a way about you, Anne. Don't let them dim your light." Anne nodded, grateful for the support. "Thank you, Mr. Phillips. I intend to introduce a high school dramatic club. It might just channel their energies into something positive." Wilfred, the lanky boy who had been on the brink of dropping out, had a history that tugged at Anne's heartstring. Raised by his uncle after his parents' passing, he had struggled to find his place both in school and in the small community of Summerside. His potential was a hidden gem, much like the secluded garden at Windy Poplars. Anne's new abode, the white frame house with its green shutters and quaint tower, stood as a beacon of hope on the grass-grown street. Its garden, vibrant with the hues of spring, was a sanctuary for Anne, where she could nurture her plans for the school and for students like Wilfred. Finding solace. Anne Shirley stepped out of the train and onto the platform, her eyes scanning the unfamiliar surroundings. She had just arrived in Summerside, a small town on Prince Edward Island, to take up her new position as principal of Summerside High School. As she made her way through the station, she couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and nervousness. The next morning, Anne walked to Windy Poplars, the house where she would be living during her stay in Summerside. The house was a charming white frame building with green shutters, a tower in the corner, and dormer windows on either side. It was surrounded by a low stone wall, with aspen poplars growing along it, and a beautiful garden at the back where flowers and vegetables were mixed together. As she entered the house, Anne was greeted by Rebecca Dulot. "Good morning, Miss Shirley," Rebecca said curtly. "I've been expecting you. You must be tired from your journey. I'll show you to your room." Anne followed Rebecca upstairs to a cozy room with a large window that looked out onto the street. She spent the morning unpacking and settling in. At lunchtime, Anne made her way downstairs to the dining room, where she met Aunt Kate McComber and Aunt Chatty McClown, the two widows who lived at Windy Poplars. "I'm so glad you're here, Miss Shirley," Aunt Chatty said, smiling warmly. Anne chatted with the aunts over lunch, learning more about their lives and interests. She discovered that Aunt Kate didn't believe in reading novels, while Aunt Chatty loved novels and had a secret hiding place where she kept them. After lunch, Anne decided to take a walk around the town to get a feel for her new surroundings. As she strolled down the main street, she noticed a group of students from the high school watching her from across the road. One of them, a girl with curly brown hair, caught her eye. "Hello there," Anne said, walking over to the group. "What are your names?" "I'm Jen Pringle," the curly-haired girl said. And this is Sophie Sinclair, Terry Gray, and Hazel Marr. As she continued her walk, Anne couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and nervousness about her new role. The next day, Anne arrived at the high school. She was greeted by the staff, who seemed friendly and welcoming. As she began her rounds of the classrooms, Anne noticed that one student in particular seemed to be struggling. Catherine Brooke, a shy and quiet girl, sat alone at her desk, looking lost and unsure of herself. Anne walked over to Catherine's desk and introduced herself. "Hello, I'm Anne Shirley, the new principal. How are you finding things so far, Catherine?" Catherine looked up at Anne with tears in her eyes. "I don't know. I just feel so overwhelmed. I don't think I can do this, Miss Shirley." Anne smiled gently and placed a reassuring hand on Catherine's shoulder. "Of course you can, Catherine. Everyone needs a little extra support sometimes. Let's work together to get you caught up, and I'm sure you'll do just fine." Catherine nodded, looking slightly more hopeful, and Anne felt a sense of determination to help this student flourish. Community dramas. Anne's arrival in Summerside had sparked a whirlwind of excitement and drama. As the new principal of Summerside High School, she was determined to make a positive impact on the community. But little did she know, the town was already simmering with underlying tensions and rivalries. One afternoon, Anne stumbled upon a heated discussion between Mrs. Campbell and Rebecca Dew. "Did you hear that Elizabeth Grayson sang at the Campbells' gathering?" Mrs. Campbell exclaimed. "I warned her not to get puffed up about it. It's only natural for a Phillips to have a good voice." Rebecca Dew chuckled, alluding to the age-old rivalry between the Phillips and Campbells and the scrutinized marriage of the Hunters and Edwardses. Anne listened intently, fascinated by the intricate web of social dynamics in Lowvale. She began to realize that every family had its own secrets and feuds, which often spilled over into public gatherings. The next day, Anne decided to direct a school play to bring the students together and provide an outlet for their creative energy. She chose Tennyson's The Lady of Shalott, hoping its themes of artistic expression and freedom would resonate with her students. As rehearsals progressed, Anne noticed that the play was having a profound effect on her students. Sandy Bugle's widow, who had been struggling to overcome her husband's passing, found solace in playing the role of the Lady of Shalott. Meanwhile, Chris Hunter discovered a hidden talent for set design, which boosted his confidence and helped him navigate his marital issues. During one rehearsal, cousin Ernestine strolled into the auditorium, critiquing Charlotte's geraniums and making snide comments about Sandy's performance. Anne swiftly intervened, reminding Ernestine that everyone deserved respect and encouragement. "Let's focus on supporting each other rather than tearing each other down," Anne said firmly but kindly. Ernestine huffed but eventually backed down, realizing that Anne's words were wise and just. As the play neared its debut, Anne sensed that it was going to be a transformative experience for the town. She hoped that it would bring people together, helping them to see beyond their petty rivalries and feuds. On the night of the performance, the auditorium was packed with families from all over Lowvale. The students took to the stage, and the audience was mesmerized by their talent and enthusiasm. The play's themes of freedom and self-expression resonated deeply with the students, and Anne could see the impact it was having on them. As the curtain fell, the audience erupted into applause, and Anne beamed with pride. She knew that this play had brought the community together in a way that nothing else could. The rivalries and feuds seemed to fade away, replaced by a sense of unity and shared purpose. After the performance, Anne received congratulations from all corners of the community. Dr. Lennox Carter praised her innovative approach to education, while Esme Taylor thanked her for giving her niece, Sandy Bugle's widow, a chance to shine. As Anne basked in the glow of success, she realized that this was just the beginning. She had a vision for a community where everyone supported each other, where creativity and self-expression were encouraged, and where petty rivalries were a thing of the past. With renewed determination, Anne set out to make that vision a day of respite. morning sun bathed the room in a soft light as Anne Shirley awoke, eager to execute her plan for Pauline Gibson's much-needed respite. Pauline led a life of servitude to her demanding mother, Mrs. Adoniram Gibson, whose every whim and desire dictated Pauline's days. From tending to her physical comforts to being at her beck and call day and night, Pauline's existence was far from her own. "Pauline, today I want you to forget your struggles," Anne said, handing her an invitation. "I've arranged for you to attend your cousin's silver wedding. It's time you had a day of freedom and joy." Pauline's eyes reflected both hope and fear as she hesitated. "But Anne, mother will never permit it." Anne's reassuring hand on her shoulder calmed her fears. "Leave that to me. Today we create memories that will sustain you in the days ahead." As the church clock chimed 10, the two women ventured into the bustling streets of Summerside. The clatter of horse-drawn carriages and the lively chatter of the townsfolk filled the air. Their first stop was the dressmaker's shop, where Pauline was transformed. She emerged from the fitting room in a dress the color of spring violets, a stark contrast to the black taffeta dress she usually wore. Anne beamed at the sight. "You look absolutely beautiful, Pauline." Pauline twirled in front of the mirror, her face alight with a happiness she hadn't felt in years. "I feel like a different person, Anne. Thank you." The two friends strolled through the town, eventually arriving at a charming cafe. Anne insisted that Pauline order whatever her heart desired. With Anne's encouragement, Pauline indulged in a plate of fresh strawberries and cream, a rare treat. As they finished their meal, Anne suggested a walk down memory lane. They visited Pauline's old home, recalling the beautiful summers they had shared as girls. They wandered through the familiar streets, taking in the sights and sounds of the town. The scent of freshly baked goods wafted from the bakery, mixing with the crisp autumn air. They made their way to the shore, where they sat in silence, watching the sunset paint the sky with vibrant hues. Pauline turned to Anne, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Anne, this has been the most wonderful day I've had in so long. I feel like I've escaped my struggles, if only for a little while." Anne smiled warmly, understanding the weight of Pauline's words. "You deserve this, Pauline. You deserve to be happy and free." As evening fell, they made their way back to Windy Poplars, where Rebecca Dew welcomed them with a warm fire and a hot water bottle for Pauline. Overwhelmed with emotion, Pauline hugged Anne tightly. "Thank you for today, Anne," she whispered. "It has been a day of respite, a day that reminds me that joy can be found even in the midst of my struggles." Anne held her close, knowing that this day would forever be etched in Pauline's memory as a beacon of hope and happiness. As Anne held Pauline close, she felt a sense of satisfaction wash over her. She knew that this day had been a small act of rebellion against the suffocating grip of Mrs. Gibson's control, and it had brought Pauline a measure of peace. Pauline pulled back, her eyes shining with tears. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you, Anne. You've given me a gift I'll treasure forever." Anne smiled and hugged her again. "You don't need to repay me, Pauline. Just knowing that I've helped you find a little happiness is all the reward I need." Rebecca Dew bustled into the room, a warm smile on her face. Now, dearie. Let's get you settled in for the night. You must be exhausted after your big day out." Pauline nodded, still looking a bit dazed from her emotional high. Anne helped her get ready for bed, tucking her in with a gentle touch. As she turned out the light and closed the door behind her, Anne felt a sense of contentment wash over her. She knew that she had made a difference in Pauline's life, if only for one day. And as she drifted off to sleep herself, she couldn't help but wonder what other small acts of rebellion she could plan to bring joy to those around her. A Christmas to remember. The snowflakes danced like tiny ballerinas in the golden white light of the winter sun as Anne Shirley made her way to Green Gables. The world was painted in pale violet and white, and the crisp scent of pine filled the air along with the distant sound of carolers. Anne's heart fluttered with Christmas joy and the anticipation of the days to come. Inside Green Gables, Marilla Cuthbert, Anne's adoptive mother, was busy in the kitchen, skillfully shaping dough for the Christmas pie. "Anne, dear, would you fetch the cinnamon from the pantry?" she called out without pausing in her task. "Of course, Marilla," Anne replied, her eyes sparkling with excitement. These little moments where they prepared for their beloved holiday traditions were what made the season so special. As Anne reached for the spice jar, a soft knock startled her. She opened the door to find Catherine Brooke, a colleague from Summerside High School, standing timidly on the threshold, a hesitant smile on her face. "Catherine, do come in. You must be freezing," Anne exclaimed, ushering her inside. The warmth of Green Gables enveloped Catherine, chasing away the winter chill. I brought this for you," Catherine said, extending a small, awkwardly wrapped package. "It's not much, but "Catherine, it's wonderful," Anne interrupted, taking the gift with a gentle smile. "Thank you so much." The two women sat by the fireplace, the dancing flames casting a soft glow on their faces. Anne's brother Matthew joined them, his kind eyes reflecting the flickering light. "Catherine?" Anne asked with a mischievous glint in her eye. "Have you ever made a plum pudding?" Catherine shook her head, a slight smile playing on her lips. "I have no idea how to make one." "Well, today's your lucky day," Anne declared. "We're making one for Christmas dinner, and you, my friend, are going to help us." The hours that followed were a blur of laughter, flour-dusted noses, and the delightful chaos of Christmas preparations. Catherine found herself swept up in the joy of the season, her usual reserve melting away like the snow outside. Later, they ventured into the woods, their boots crunching through the snow as they searched for the perfect Christmas tree. Anne's enthusiasm was infectious as she pointed out each potential candidate. "Look at this one, Catherine. Isn't it splendid?" Anne exclaimed, gesturing to a tall fir that stood proudly among its peers. "It's beautiful," Catherine agreed, a genuine smile touching her lips. The first time in a long while. Together they decorated the tree with strings of popcorn and cranberries, and when the candles were lit, the room transformed into a magical wonderland. That evening, as guests began to arrive for the Christmas party, Catherine felt a nervous flutter in her stomach. But Anne was there, whispering words of encouragement. "You look lovely, Catherine," Anne said. "Just be yourself and everything will be fine." Catherine took a deep breath and stepped into the room. The friendly faces of the guests greeted her warmly, and she read a passage from her favorite book, her voice steady and clear. To her surprise, they applauded, making her feel truly welcomed. As the night wore on, Catherine realized something profound. She was no longer an outsider looking in. She was part of a community, a family, all because of Anne, her unexpected friend who had seen beyond her prickly exterior. As the party drew to a close, Catherine sought out Anne and took her hands. "Thank you, Anne, for everything." Anne's smile was as bright as the stars outside. "Merry Christmas, my dear friend." The next morning, as Catherine prepared to leave Green Gables, she felt a sense of reluctance to say goodbye to the place that had brought her so much joy. "Catherine," Anne said, handing her a small package wrapped in brown paper, "I have something for you before you go." Catherine's eyes widened in surprise. "For me?" "Yes," Anne replied with a knowing smile. "I know how much you appreciate the beauty in simple things. I thought you might like this." Catherine carefully unwrapped the package to reveal a delicate silver bracelet adorned with a single pearl. "Oh, it's exquisite," she breathed. "I'm glad you like it," Anne said softly. "Consider it a token of my friendship and a reminder that you are loved and valued." Catherine's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she clasped the bracelet around her wrist. "I will treasure it always, and I will never forget the lessons I've learned here, about friendship, about embracing life, and about finding beauty in the simplest of pleasures." As Catherine departed, her heart felt lighter. The weight of her past insecurities seemed to have lifted during her time at Green Gables. Although she knew challenges lay ahead, she now possessed the strength and courage to face them head-on. With a final wave goodbye, Catherine Brooke left Green Gables, her spirit imbued with hope and self-acceptance. The memories of her transformative Christmas would sustain her in the days to come, reminding her that even in the darkest times, there was always the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Transformative experience. Elizabeth Grayson's arrival at Green Gables was a significant moment in her life. Welcomed warmly by Anne Shirley, Marilla, Mrs. Lynde, and the twins, Davy and Dora, she immediately felt a sense of belonging. The environment at Green Gables was a stark contrast to her previous home, the Evergreens, where she had lived a life of restraint. Here, she was encouraged to be herself, to explore, and to engage with the world around her with a newfound confidence. Elizabeth quickly became an integral part of the Green Gables family, sharing in the daily life and special moments. Her presence brought a fresh energy to the household, and her interactions with Anne and the others allowed her to open up and embrace her true self. As Elizabeth prepared to leave Green Gables, she reflected on her experiences. The time spent there had been a period of growth and self-discovery. Although she was saddened by the thought of departure, she knew that the memories and lessons from Green Gables would stay with her forever, shaping her future and the way she viewed the world. It was not just a place but a chapter in her life that would continue to inspire her long after she had left. On her last night, Anne sat with Elizabeth on the porch looking up at the stars. Remember, every experience you've had, every moment of joy and love is yours to keep, Anne whispered. You can always come back to Green Gables, but even if you can't, know that you'll carry its spirit with you wherever you go. Legacy of warmth. As Anne's time at Windy Poplars came to an end, she reflected on her experiences. The Pringle family's initial resistance, the intricate social landscape of Summerside, and the meaningful relationships she forged marked her journey. Her departure was felt deeply by the widows, especially Rebecca Dew, who expressed her heartfelt gratitude and enduring bond with Anne through a letter. Anne's influence on Elizabeth Grayson was profound, guiding her from a place of uncertainty to one of confidence and joy. Their farewells were touching, with promises to remember the lessons and love shared. Anne's influence on the community and on individuals like Elizabeth and Rebecca would remain, a testament to the positive change she inspired. Farewell and new beginnings. The morning sun cast a golden hue over Windy Poplars as Anne Shirley prepared for her departure. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers and the sound of laughter from the children playing in the distance. Anne stood at the gate, her suitcase by her side, taking a moment to etch the scene into her memory. Rebecca Dew approached, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Anne, my dear," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "I cannot begin to express how much you've meant to us all." Anne smiled warmly, reaching out to squeeze Rebecca's hand. "You've been like family to me, Rebecca. I will carry our memories with me always." As Anne boarded the train, she looked out to see the faces of those she had touched. The train whistle blew, a poignant farewell that echoed through the town, and as the landscape began to blur, Anne settled into her seat, her thoughts drifting to the future. With a heart full of memories and a spirit buoyed by hope, Anne Shirley journeyed onward, ready for the next chapter of her life. She knew that the bonds formed in Summerside would last a lifetime, and the lessons learned would guide her on the new paths she would tread. "Goodbye, Windy Poplars," Anne whispered, her voice trailing off as the train picked up speed.